Hey friends, welcome back to Extraordinary Strides. I'm Coach Christine, and this is episode 2 of Running, Reading, and Racing in the USA. Over 5 Wednesdays this July, we're celebrating America's 250th by traveling alphabetically through all the 50 states. Each state gets 3 books and a Runcation shortlist that includes everything from 5Ks all the way to marathons, trail adventures, even some relays and races. Now, what I do want you to know, as we are officially in the second episode of this installment series, that we are going to make our way over to Hawaii. So a little bit of aloha, friends. We're going to kick this right off. You had the first 10 states in last week's episode. If you need to go back through there, I will make sure to add that into episode notes. But let's go ahead and get right to it because we have a lot of beautiful states to cover. And I can tell you right here and now, this is such a hard thing to do, to choose only 3 books or only 3 races. So occasionally there may be an honorable mention or maybe some alternatives because as you're going to come to realize, there is a whole lot more to this gorgeous United States that we have to offer. As we make our way to Hawaii, I do want to start with a little bit of care because Hawaii is not simply a pretty backdrop for just a runcation. It is a living place with native Hawaiian culture, complicated histories of tourism and land access, and radically different islands and weather that can change the whole plan before your Garmin even finds the satellites. That's super fast. Our first book is Molokai by Alan Brennert. It begins with Rachel Kalama, a 7-year-old girl in 1890s Honolulu who is diagnosed with Hansen's disease and sent to the isolated Kalupapa settlement on Molokai. This is emotional historical fiction. It is not going to be a light beach read. I'm so sorry, my friends. But it is a powerful doorway into family, faith, resilience, friendship, and an era that deserves more than just a passing glance. It's also the kind of book that reminds us of every place we visit contains a story that asks for more than just a quick takeaway. Our second pick is Hula by Jasmine Iloni Heikes, a Hilo-centered 3-generation story that uses family, tradition, ambition, and the intensity of the Miss Aloha Hula competition to explore what it means to inherit a culture while still trying to make it your own. This is your contemporary family saga pick, and it gives us a lens that is more rooted in local life than the familiar postcard version of Hawaii. And then our wild card is This Is Paradise by Christina Kakahuwila, a short story collection that's both beautiful and sharp-edged. These are obviously stories that kind of really give you a deeper dive into Hawaii, letting you know that it's not quite just, again, a postcard. It does deal with modern island life, relationships, class, tourism, desire, power, and the gap between what visitors imagine and what residents actually live. If you want the most conversation-rich choice of the 3, this is likely going to be the one for you. Now, with that said, we're going to lace on up. I want you to know that one of the most popular races that you will likely see in terms of the amount of people who talk about it is going to be the Honolulu Marathon. But I left that one very purposefully off the list because while it is a wonderfully pace-inclusive race, and I will always give race directors a lot of kudos for that, plenty of runners have had maybe a little bit less than the best experience there. Specifically regarding production, swag, and the execution felt mixed enough that I didn't want it to be our automatic go-to Hawaii recommendation. Now, that doesn't mean that I don't believe that it would be a valuable race for you. It just simply means that for this purpose, I wanted to choose a little bit beyond the obvious choice. And so my first one on the list is the Kauai Marathon and Half Marathon. This is going to be more of our destination race anchor. It's usually held around Labor Day weekend, and it gives you ocean views. There is great logistics regarding getting resorts, and it's a course that is a bit more rolling than the Hawaii vacation may lead you to expect. Runners tend to love the scenery and the aloha-style hospitality, but I do want you to be aware there is no joke when you come to heat, hills, and humidity. They are not just decorative pieces. You must train, you must be prepared, and you must have a good, strong hydration strategy as part of your race plans. So I want you, though, to think of this as an opportunity to build in enough post-race time to enjoy the entire area rather than immediately having to scramble toward the airport. That is the one big takeaway from a lot of these races. You want to be able to have time to dive into the areas as well. Second on my list is the Hapalua, which is our Oahu Half Marathon option, and it usually lands in spring, and it gives runners a little bit of that Honolulu waterfront energy without committing to the full marathon distance. So this is the time where you could think of those beautiful sunrise, the ocean. It has a bit more of a polished city race feel and a course that can be friendly for a destination half. But I do want you to know you're still going to get exposed to sun and wind. So this is one of those that you have to plan really well for, again, that you're going to have some elements to take into account. But it's also a fantastic one if you want just a race weekend that has a few days of beach food and neighborhood exploring around it as well. Last but not least on this list is the Maui Oceanfront Marathon. This one's going to be a little bit more intimate. It's a bit more scenic, in my opinion, of the research that I did. It has a very long history, a smaller scale field than some of the giant destination races, but it has a phenomenal reputation for views that will absolutely be worth your while. The course experience has changed over the years, so read the current map very carefully, but the draw is still simple. You get a road race adventure in a place where the ocean, sunrise, and mountain backdrop are all doing the absolute most. Now, my personal opinion of what I would put onto my list that must go together, well, my friend, I'm sure it does not surprise you that my book choice of these three would be Hula, and I am making my way to the Hapalua. It gives us tradition, family, community, but also a little bit of that shorter race distance because you know I love me the half marathon, and enough time afterward to explore without needing a full recovery week. Now, if you don't want to go for a race and you just find yourself in the beautiful state of Hawaii, maybe add a little bit of Kapi'olani Park or Ala Moana Beach Park or Hilo Bayfront on your run walk list of choice. Again, Hawaii is one of those places where moving slowly is a little bit part of getting it right. So you don't have to speed through any of those destination aspects. Now, friends, what I do want to say as I look back on some of these words and my likely horrific pronunciation, I'm so sorry. If I didn't pronounce it correctly, feel free to correct me, send me a message, let me know what I should have said instead. But hopefully you'll bear with me a little bit and know that my heart is in the right place. As we leave Hawaii and we head to Idaho, I want to say this straight away. It's been so fun doing this. So while it's been hard for me to choose just a few for all of the states, it's also been exciting to see just how beautifully, vastly different the landscape of this country may be. And also some of the aspects of like learning of these different locations and places that really do sound incredibly exciting. So Idaho may not sound at first blush as exciting as going to Hawaii, but there are some beautiful aspects of it from the state having lake countries and high peaks. There's just some really beautiful aspects. There's the foothills. So I want you to think about the fact that there is a high point here. Idaho's highest point is 12,662 feet. That is no joke. But it also has Hell's Canyon that's deeper than Grand Canyon in some places. So this state has some terrain changes. Now, I do want you to think about the fact that you are going to likely have some remote races or run locations if this is your jam to go explore the entire state. But first, let's dive into maybe the books that you're going to want to read a little bit more. So my literary anchor choice is Housekeeping by Marilynne Robinson. It's set in the fictional town of Fingerbone, Idaho. This is a spare but haunting novel about two sisters, their unconventional aunt, and you know we all have an unconventional aunt or two, the family instability, water, memory, and the way grief changes, what a home even means. This is not a plot-forward escapism. It is a book that you're going to want to read slowly. You're going to want to maybe take in, make some little notes in the book. So again, this is definitely something you're going to want to have an actual hard copy for and some time to process all the emotions that it could possibly stir up. Then maybe a little bit more accessible of our contemporary pick is Idaho by Emily Ruskovich. Hopefully I'm saying that correctly. Emily Ruskovich, right? Well, this is a family story that begins with an unthinkable act and then moves backward and then forward, a little bit of that time displacement through memory, motherhood, marriage, responsibility, and the people left behind to live with what cannot be undone. It is emotionally heavy, but it's beautifully structured, and its northern Idaho setting feels a little cold and remote, but deeply present without becoming a little too much of just rolling your eyes because the scenery sounds too perfect. Now, our wild card is Train Dreams by Dennis Johnson. Now, this one's going to be a short but very powerful novella. It's going to talk about lumber camps, railroads, wildfire, labor, loss in the Pacific Northwest with the Idaho borderlands. It's a great option for someone who says, I really want to read, but I don't have the capacity today for a 600-page epic. So my friend, I see you on that. I know sometimes just a short little read is exactly what we need. This will be it for you. Okay, my friend, for the running side, our anchor is the CDA Marathon, formerly known as the Coeur d'Alene Marathon. This is your lake town destination race. It's usually in late spring where you get some water views, a course with more personality than a pancake flat city loop, and the chance to make a whole weekend out of northern Idaho. The consistent feedback from runners is that the setting is absolutely gorgeous, that the volunteer support is warm. They also say that the watch out is that the smaller destination race does require a little bit more self-sufficiency with travel and course specific. So read some of those suggestions and tips before booking. Now we're going to make our way from the CDA to the Jackass Half Marathon and 5K. And of course, that wins the prize for name alone, but it's much more than just a funny shirt. This is a smaller, local feeling Idaho option, so do not expect a giant expo. But definitely expect a really warm community personality that makes you feel like you actually went to Idaho. This is, again, that option that lets you feel like I'm part of the community for the weekend trip. Now, this is a little bit more of a low-pressure road trip weekend, but it has smaller events. It has great information. You can check out the courses. The packet logistics are super smooth, and aid details should always be confirmed, though, a little closer to race day because those things can evolve year to year. And then we have Mesa Falls. This is a high country wild card. You got that right, man. I told you they have some elevation up there in Idaho. It's known for its scenery. It also has a fast feeling net downhill profile in some of the distances. Of course, it does definitely ask you to respect the downhill. Remember, those downhills can be absolute slay your quads and your joints. So be very mindful of that when you're preparing for it. Now, runner feedback tends to celebrate the views, the fall color potential, and the PR possibilities, because aren't we all a little happy about some PRs? But the practical advice is always the same. While I know that so many runners will look at net downhills and think this is easy peasy for me, it's not necessarily. It does come with its own tax, and that usually shows up around mile 19. So be prepared. My personal preference, what I think I would tackle, I think that I would say my Idaho pairing is Train Dreams, because we need a little bit of short novellas in our life, and the CDA Marathon. You get a book that respects the landscape and a race that lets you actually move through a lakeside little slice of that landscape. And if you're not racing, give yourself a few miles on the Coeur d'Alene Sentinel Trail or the Boise River Greenbelt. Idaho is a place where your easy run may turn into a very serious, I want to take out my phone and take all the photos. And I'm here for it, my friend. If you're there, take some photos and send them to me. I want to see. We're going to leave Idaho, and we're going to either jump in our car now and head to Illinois. Now, this one is going to be a little obvious, but don't worry. I've got some different little options for you here, because Illinois is a state that reminds us that flat doesn't always mean easy. Definitely, we always love that pancake flat, and there is a lot of that. But there is a lot to be seen there as well, and a lot to prepare for. Chicago alone, let's be honest, it could carry an entire season of this entire series. There are so many phenomenal races just in Chicago, and so many phenomenal books set in Chicago. My iconic pick will always be The Devil in the White City by Erik Larson. It is nonfiction, but it reads with the momentum of a thriller. I love Erik Larson as an author. He tells the story, though, in this particular book of the 1893 Chicago World's Fair, alongside the story of H.H. Holmes, which means you get architecture, you get ambition, innovation, you get spectacle, you get crime, and you get a city trying to show the world where it can become. Trust me, my friends, this is everything that Coach Christine loves in one gorgeous book. This is truly the best of all worlds. And it's like, if you like history, but you want something that's a bit of a thriller read, this is your book. Then there is The House on Mango Street by Sandra Cisneros. It's beautifully accessible. It is, to me, a quick read. We meet Esperanza, a young Latina girl growing up in Chicago neighborhood, trying to understand her home, identity, what it's like to leave from girlhood, become into womanhood, language barriers, and the possibilities. It is short, but it is poetic. It's wildly taught, and it still gives you more to talk about than many books do that are even much longer to read. Now, the wild card book is going to be The Time Traveler's Wife. What I think is so interesting about this is that obviously it is a book, it is a romance, but it also has sci-fi. It all tackles grief and the logistical nonsense that would happen if your husband kept time traveling without your consent. It is big, it's readable, it's an emotional novel, and it's also been adapted for screen. That makes it more of an easy read-watch pairing for anyone training on the treadmill and looking for a little bit small dose of that emotional component that keeps them listening or keeps them running through those miles. Now, on the race front, we could not talk about Illinois. It just is not feasible without us going to the iconic Chicago Marathon. It's obvious. I get it. It's a world marathon major for a reason. It is spectacularly flat by major marathon standards, or actually most marathon standards. It is a 6-star dream for so many people, but we know it's not easy to get into anymore. It used to be a lot more accessible, but with the demand, it can be very difficult. I will highly recommend, if this is on your to-do list, you lock in a charity sooner rather than later. But if that is not for you at this point, I have more things on my list, don't worry. If you're looking for that kind of feel of the Chicago Marathon, but maybe not quite so insanely big or hard to get into, you look no further than the Shamrock Shuffle 8K. It's still a big city race. It is always a very fun little distance. It's still highly sought after because it's put on by the Chicago Area Runners Association, the same people who put on Chicago Marathon. It is a capped field. I mean, there's so many wonderful reasons to love it, but it's still maybe a little bit easier to pop into that than it is the Chicago Marathon. So if you're in that or destined to go to that area, I would strongly suggest adding this to the list. Now, if either of those, you're like, I just don't have time and energy to force like the wills of the lottery gods to happen for me. If you're not hoping to make that kind of your personality, then you can totally tackle the Quad Cities Marathon. It is a phenomenal alternative choice. While it's not a major, that is exactly the point. It brings strong race production, generally very positive runner feedback. It has a flat to gently rolling Mississippi River setting and a much more manageable race experience. And aren't we all looking for that nowadays? If you're chasing a fast course with a lot less stress than a major and you want that Midwest race, this is it. Quad Cities belongs on your list. So my personal Illinois pairing is going to be The House on Mango Street plus the Shamrock Shuffle. I feel they're both iconic and unique. You can read this really quick little book, maybe even on your plane, then run a joyful 8K, because who doesn't love a 4.97 race? And then spend the afternoon eating something wonderful and pretending you haven't already looked at Chicago Marathon qualifying standards 300 and 1,000 times. But yeah, I think it's such a great way to make it a weekend trip up there. Now, a couple things to take into consideration with all of this is that all of the races are getting harder to get into. So be aware that if you really want to make any of these happen, start planning accordingly. If you want to make your way out to Chicago and you really aren't looking to spend tons and tons and tons of time figuring out a race for yourself, I can honestly say that one of my favorite runs to date was just in the middle of summer. Chicago Lakefront Trail. It was especially beautiful. I was also especially grateful that it was nice and cool in comparison to my Florida temperatures. There's the skyline, the lake, the beaches. It was just absolutely perfect. So you don't have to have a bib to get in a gorgeous run in Illinois or in Chicago. Okay, my friend, we're making our way out of Illinois, heading not too far away to Indiana. Now, I do think that it's quite fun that we can say that Indiana also gives us a little bit of Midwest doesn't always mean pancake flat, but there's a lot of fun things to do there. Indiana's a state that has a lot more range. You have the Indianapolis Speedway history, a half marathon that loops the Brickyard. You have city trails, leafy suburbs, small town literary history, and then you have Brown County, which is here to remind anyone calling Indiana flat that hills would like a word. Our anchor book is The Magnificent Ambersons by Booth Tarkington. It's a Pulitzer-winning classic set in the fictionalized version of Indianapolis. It follows a wealthy family as the city around them changes. There's cars and industry class, social shifts, the fear of becoming irrelevant. Basically, it's a very old book with some aggressively current feelings. It was adapted by Orson Welles, and it's a strong choice for readers who like classic fiction, but want something a little more city-minded than prairie-minded. Next on the list is The Fault in Our Stars by John Green. It's a very accessible pick. It's set in Indianapolis as well, and it follows Hazel and Augustus as they navigate illness, humor, love, and the question of how much life can you fit into the time that we have? This is a question that I honestly always have for myself, because as we come to realize so much great, big, beautiful world for us to run, right? So how do we fit as much of it in as possible? It did become a major film. It's really emotionally direct. And yes, you need to plan your post-run hydration around the possibility of tears. For our wild card, we have A Girl of the Limberlost by Jean Stratton Porter. This is your Indiana nature and coming of age option, if you will. It's set in around the Limberlost swamp country. It is older, it is earnest, but it's very much of its period, and it's also a reminder that regional literature can be a beautiful way into the state's ecosystem, especially the landscapes that have changed or disappeared. Now, our race anchor is the One America 500 Festival Mini Marathon. It usually takes place the first Saturday in May, hello, my birthday weekend, and includes a lap around the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. Let me say that again for the racing nerds in the back. You get to run around the Speedway. Yes. It's a big field. It's a polished half marathon with huge local support. And if you're a runner who secretly wants to stand on a racetrack and pretend that your 10:30 pace is somehow sponsored, this is your event. There's also the C&O Financial Indianapolis Monumental Marathon, and that's a fall option for runners who want flat, fast, and well-supported. It's typically early November, runs through downtown Indy, and has built-in reputation as a Boston qualifying-friendly course. Runner feedback often points to a good organization, enthusiastic volunteers, and manageable big city logistics. The one thing that we never get to control in any of these races, my friends, is weather. So train for the course, but prepare for whatever November is doing at that time of year. Of course, there's also the Carmel Marathon. It's your suburban destination pick. It tends to be a spring event and offers a course that runners often describe as friendly, organized, and well-positioned for a focused race effort. Carmel itself has the kind of polished, walkable, restaurant-filled setup that makes traveling for a race feel easy without requiring that major city expense account. Now, I want to give a huge shout out here to a special friend of the pod, Cheryl Stewart. You guys know and love her if you've been listening for some time. She's been on the podcast, and she is just a well-known, lovable figure of our group. She gave a lot of insight on these races. She definitely thinks they're phenomenal, but she also gave us a little bit more insight of maybe some smaller races that you should tackle as well. She said Brown City Hilly Half. She said, look, it is beautiful. It is charming. It is just the kind of course that you cannot wait to see all that finish line scenery. But it is not for the weak. She didn't say that. She just said it's not for the faint-hearted because there are hills. So train accordingly, my friend. But I bet she would join you if you want to give her a special call. I have a feeling she would. I also added in the Christmas in July half marathon and 5K, not because there aren't other Christmas in Julys around the United States. There are tons of races with that Christmas in July, But this particular course looks absolutely beautiful. It looks like it's so much fun. It's, again, much smaller field than what we have at the Mini or Monumental or Carmel even. But I think it'd be worth it. Now, my personal Indiana pairing, if you will, is The Fault in Our Stars. And you guys know me. I'm always going to go for the Mini. So Indy Mini sounds right up my alley. So you get Indianapolis on the page and at the Speedway, plus a half marathon that feels like a true event without asking you to move there for 3 years just to understand the transit map. I'm looking at you, you big city races, because that can be very overwhelming. Okay, my friends, if you're making your way there and you're like, you know what, I'm not getting into any of these races, but I definitely want to get in some running time, I'm going to suggest Monon Trail in the Cultural Trail. And if you want nature, listen to Cheryl. Head to Brown County State Park, get out there with some nice little more trail adventure, but make sure that your footwear is appropriate for it. All right, friends, we're going to make our way from Indiana, pack in the car. Whew, it's going to be a little bit of a road trip now. We're heading our way to Iowa. But in Iowa, there are bridges and family farms. Well, here, let me tell you all about it. You're like, I don't know that there's anything to do in Iowa. Well, let me tell you, I had a hard time making it just 3. Seriously, there is some really great stuff here. There is a really strong running community. There are some absolutely gorgeous, gorgeous settings. And that's exactly what you're going to find in the very first book on this list, The Bridges of Madison County by Robert James Waller. Yes, it is a book, again, that became an iconic film. It has Meryl Streep and Clint Eastwood, so how could you possibly go wrong? It is a quiet, romantic story about a National Geographic photographer and an Iowa farm wife whose brief connection changes the emotional landscape of a life. You may love it. You may roll your eyes. You may do both. But if you want a book that says Iowa in a single image, those covered bridges are hard to beat. Next on the book list is 1,000 Acres by Janie Smiley. It's a literary anchor counterweight. It is a King Lear retelling. You heard me right. It's a King Lear retelling set an Iowa farm. How cool is that? And it asks some really big questions about land, inheritance, family, power, memory, and the stories that families tell themselves to survive. It is a little darker. It's a little more layered. It's not necessarily one of the books that you're going to put on your list if you want something that's quick or easy to read, but it gives you an Iowa that is complicated, not just quaint. Next on my list may have been added there just because I remember the iconic actor that was Leo DiCaprio in What's Eating Gilbert Grape by Peter Hedges. It is a wild card, but it is a small town Iowa story about a young man carrying more responsibility than anyone should have to carry. It's also a very young Johnny Depp. Again, it was adapted into a 1993 film. And if you saw the film, go back and give this book a read. It gives a very human portrait of family, caretaking, shame, desire, and the difficult question of when is it okay to want a life beyond the one that you have been assigned? That's a powerful question, my friend. But for our races, because that's the assignment, we're going to make our way to IMT Des Moines Marathon. It's an obvious anchor. It's typically mid-October, offers a full range of race weekend distances, and has a reputation for that friendly Midwestern production. It is also really well known for being a BQ-capable course and a downtown finish that feels big enough to be a celebration, but not so enormous that you need a full, dedicated tactical plan for it. Again, runner feedback is always really high and good when it comes to Des Moines Marathon, but if you wanted a little bit more of a community-driven alternative, we'll make our way to Cedar Rapids Marathon. It's usually associated with the springtime race weekend, and it does also have multiple different distances. This is a good fit for the runner who wants a state marathon or half without turning the whole experience into a major event logistics puzzle. And then the next one, my friends, the last on my list here is Dam to DSM. It's a half marathon wild card. The name tells you exactly what you need to know. It is a point-to-point race that takes you from the dam to downtown Des Moines. This format makes it very memorable. And it gives you the special satisfaction of watching a city approach as your miles tick down. So my friends, if you're not familiar, this is actually the kind of format that you would have at Boston. It's a point to point, and it can be a little bit overwhelming from a logistics standpoint out of majors, but not quite so much at a smaller race. So I would suggest that you add this if you think that you're going to add a point-to-point down the road that may be a bit bigger scale, like Boston in your cards. But again, I do want you to know it is a popular enough race that you should not leave this until the very last moment. Just because it's a smaller town home race in terms of compared to Boston or the majors, it's still quite popular. So you're going to want to get that one in. Me personally, I am going to reread What's Eating Gilbert Grape as my go-to book. And I want to make my way to all three of these races, but I think I have to do that point-to-point of Dam to DSM. It just, how could you not? Now, if you're making your way there and you're like, again, I don't have a race on the horizon, go check out the Grays Lakes and the downtown trails in Des Moines. For a destination run, you can make your way to High Trestle Trail. It's going to deliver one of the state's most memorable bridge experiences. Now, I do want you to know a little bit of information, a little tidbit, if you will, of Iowa. Is Hawkeye Point tops out at 1,670 feet. So again, not quite like Idaho. But while Iowa is not high altitude country, there are rivers and wind and those rolling roads that can absolutely make for a really beautiful scenic run. Next on my list, we're not in Kansas anymore, Toto, but actually we are, because that's exactly where we're going. So I know you're already thinking, are we going to do the Wizard of Oz? Yeah, we're going to do the Wizard of Oz. But hold on, because there's so much more. Kansas is not only the launching pad for a yellow brick road. It is prairie, there is history, but there's also a lot of immigrant communities or small towns. There can be some weather that can be pretty tough, and it has a literary legacy. I mean, come on, it truly. So at the very top of the list, how could I not have The Wonderful Wizard of Oz by L. Frank Baum? I mean, I should have, seriously, we know that Wicked is also making all the rounds, but The Wonderful Wizard of Oz, where it all started, is right here and there. Kansas is where Dorothy begins, and in that sense, it's the starting line for one of the most recognizable journeys in American literature. The book itself is strange and a bit more political than the movie many of us grew up with. But because it is public domain, it's one of the easiest titles in this whole project for you to be able to access for free $99, which is going to be needed because we've got a lot of races to pay for, my friend. But let's say you went a little heavier of a read. Well, we're going to make our way to In Cold Blood by Truman Capote. It is heavy, but it's an important choice here. It's a literary nonfiction about the 1959 murder of the Clutter family in Holcomb, Kansas. It is influential, controversial. You did hear me right that it's not emotional light, correct? But it is a foundational way if you want to talk about true crime, narrative ethics, what it means to turn real suffering into art, and why a small town can be both a setting and a participant to a story. Okay, this one's a little bit warmer. Moon Over Manifest by Claire Vanderpool. Even though it doesn't avoid big subjects, it's still going to be a little bit of an easier read than In Cold Blood. It's set in fictional Manifest, Kansas during the Depression era. It follows a girl piecing together family history through the stories of a town. It also won the Newbery Medal. It's accessible for adults and young readers, and it has that satisfying, there's a mystery, but also a community feeling. Now, for our races, you did hear me that we have to discover the Wizard of Oz here. And that's exactly what we're going to do with our races, because we're going to head to Garmin Olathe Marathon in the Land of Oz. It's the obvious theme win. It is in the Kansas City metro area, and the Oz branding makes it particularly charming fit for this episode. And a lot of 50-staters target this one on their list. It's not just a cute race name, though. It offers a very approachable Midwest race experience for people who want organized productions, but still don't want to fight that giant lottery system. So add this to your list if it's not there already for when you're heading to Kansas. But if you don't want to maybe go with an obvious choice, the Salina Crossroads Marathon has that small town Crossroads of America option. It's the kind of event that can appeal to state collectors because the logistics are so much more manageable. You're not going to be disappearing into a pack of 40,000. And you may find yourself a bit more alone out in the cornfields. And last but not least, Running with the Cows is the quirky community favorite. It's exactly what it sounds like. It has a lot of rural personality, a lot of local spirit, and a race name you will enjoy explaining to people for years. That's a t-shirt that I would keep. I can promise you that. Now, it doesn't need a giant field or a global brand to become unforgettable. Sometimes you just need a good route a good community, and possibly a little bit of a reminder to keep moving on. Yes, I did just do the most obvious, horrible pun, but hey, I can. All right, if you're making your way there and you're like, I'm not going to run at a race, but I do want to get in a run, you can hit the Kansas City area trails, and the Wichita River paths are easy options. But if you want a different kind of landmark run, I'm going to suggest the Tallgrass Prairie and Flint Hills are worth making a little bit of a side trip for. Before we officially leave Kansas and Toto, I have to ask you, my friends, did you like The Return to Oz as much as you liked The Wizard of Oz? Or if you're like me, you liked it a little bit more? Super weird, definitely very 80s. But if you did not watch the movie, you should definitely check that one out. Okay, we're going to make ourselves to one of my favorite states on this list because the people of Kentucky are absolutely the most amazing humans I have ever met. It's a state where there's books, there's roads, there's horses, and I love me watching some horses. There's caves and there's bourbon. And also relay vans. They're going to all make sense because you can find them all in Kentucky. Kentucky has Black Mountain, has Mammoth Cave, there's bluegrass roads between, a running calendar that lets you choose between all sorts of options. We're going to go right into our books. The book Woman of Troublesome Creek by Kim Mitchell Richardson is our first pick. It follows Cussie Mary Carter, a Kentucky pack horse librarian in the 1930s, carrying books into mountain communities. It's a historical fiction, which may be one of my favorite genres. And it has a strong book club appeal, so you could add that to your book club if you're thinking of one, because it gives us literacy class, isolation work in Appalachian life. And I've been told I say that incorrectly. You're welcome to remind me how I'm supposed to say that. It also touches on the so-called blue people of Kentucky, so it is a good one to discuss thoughtfully rather than flattening the history into trivia. Next on, we're going to go to The Giver of Stars by Jojo Moyes. It is a popular companion choice, also inspired by the Pack Horse Library Project. It's a more straightforwardly page-turning and friendship-centered, with women, books, mountain communities, and the very reasonable belief that delivering literature by horse should have a much larger cultural movement. And The Bourbon Kings is my third choice by J.R. Ward. It's a delicious wild card. It has, caramely sweet notes, if you will. It's a Kentucky bourbon dynasty drama with family secrets, wealth, romance, and all the heightened energy you would expect from a book that looks like a powerful family and says, yeah, what if we make this messier? It's not a historical literacy pick, but it does have this let's bring it on vacation and stay up too late reading it. So many great races to choose from here on this list. There is one that didn't make it here, but it's going to be a bit of a wild card. You'll hear it later in the series. It's hard for me not to add it here, but just because there were so many options. So my friends, what we're going to start with here is the Kentucky Derby Festival Mini Marathon and Marathon are the big Louisville anchor. They happen in the lead up to Derby season. They carry huge local festive energy. They have just a great way to experience Louisville when the whole city is super ready and poised to celebrate. The mini marathon is especially popular and has enough personality to feel more like than just a half marathon. So start looking into that if you want to make that happen. Now, for y'all that don't know, I was able to finally cross off Bourbon Chase from my bucket list last year, doing it again this year because evidently I'm crazy. But it is a relay wild card on this list. It's also the most logistically maybe challenging on the list. But it's not a solo race. You can do an ultra team, but it's a team road trip through Kentucky bourbon country with overnight driving, relay exchanges. Definitely, I think it's the least amount of sleep I've ever had in my life, but there are van snacks if you have the right van mates. Looking at you, Kimba. And a finish line story that you're going to talk about for years. It requires a lot of team planning, actual shared responsibility, and probably 4 or 5 different spreadsheets. I am biased because I love relays. It's really one of the coolest ways I have ever experienced the state. And I definitely think it should be added to the list. But if you're thinking, I don't have time or energy for all of that, but I still want me some bourbon, then you need to look at the Urban Bourbon Half Marathon in Louisville. It lets you lean into the city, the food, the bourbon country identity in a more normal amount of time on your feet. But if you don't want that, we also have the Run the Bluegrass, a gorgeous Lexington area option that's known for horse country scenery. And let me tell you, it is so beautiful and rolling terrain. So don't let that bluegrass make you think of Pancake Flat. Those hills have some pretty strong opinions. My personal Kentucky pairing, if you will, is the Book Woman of Troublesome Creek and the Kentucky Derby Festival Mini Marathon, if you didn't make it onto the Bourbon Chase team, of course. All right, my friends, if you're making your way to the gorgeous state of Kentucky where the people are just so kind, or maybe they're just drinking bourbon and that makes them kind, I don't know. But you don't want to sign up for a race, you could hit up the Louisville Waterfront Park, the Big Four Bridge for city movement, or Red River Gorge for trail scenery. Of course, if you make your way to Lexington, it has those horse country roads, but you do need to be aware those roads are not closed just because you're out for a run. Okay, I know I just said that Kentucky has some of my favorite people in the entire world, and that's true. But I also love the great people of the state of Louisiana, and I love Louisiana. I haven't visited the entire state, but New Orleans feels a little bit like just a homecoming for me. So I absolutely am excited to get into Louisiana because we know that this is one of those states for any foodie who's listening in is going to want to definitely take a dive into it. And it just feels like if there's another state out like there in the world, it's a bit of Florida where it's a hodgepodge of just some fascinating histories and peoples, Louisiana kind of feels like it would be it. Now, our iconic book set in Louisiana is A Confederacy of Dunces by John Kennedy Toole. It is a New Orleans classic, a very particular kind of comic chaos, if you will. Ignatius J. Riley is one of the most unforgettable characters in American literature, and the book gives you streets, food, social friction, lots of absurdity, and a city that feels very alive on every single page. This is going to be the choice for anyone who likes their literary travel with a sharp sense of humor. You can't talk about Louisiana, you can't talk about New Orleans without Interview with a Vampire by Anne Rice. Admit it. You read it. I know you did. Before vampires were sparkly, there was Interview with a Vampire. It is our very popular Gothic pick. New Orleans has that vibe that just comes through, shines through in the book, but there's also immortality, desire, grief, and an atmosphere that all get turned up to 11. Now, if for some reason Interview with a Vampire is not your jam, but you want a little bit of like that Louisiana vibe with a touch of vampires as well, then you're going to like the Sookie Stackhouse series. It's a little bit more Southern Gothic, a little bit more small town, isn't just set in New Orleans, but it also has some fun paranormal aspects of it. Either way, I would love to hear if you're more like the traditional classic Interview with a Vampire, or if you are a little bit more of a modern romance paranormal with the Sookie Stackhouse. Let me know if either of them are on your list. And then, of course, there's Cane River by Lolita Tademy. It's a historical family saga. It's inspired by the author's own ancestors. It follows several generations of women in Louisiana's Cane River region across more than a century of American history. And this is the book that asks you to, slow it down a little bit. Sit with the inheritance, the race, the survival, the family, and the way that women carry their stories forward from generation to generation. 4 races, the Louisiana Marathon in Baton Rouge is our full marathon anchor. It is typically staged in January when the weather is often much friendlier down here in the South. Though, of course, no Gulf Coast race promises you to have perfect conditions, but it does have a really great race weekend with lots of different distances, great city support, and that manageable destination marathon feel. Reviews tend to say that they love the organization, the friendliness of the volunteers, because the people in Louisiana are fantastic, of course, and the ability to really check off the list here with that getting to see Louisiana, getting to dive into it, but not being incredibly expensive or having an entry barrier. Now, I have heard wonderful things of Zydeco Marathon in Cajun country, so it would be an alternative to Baton Rouge. It offers a regional Louisiana experience with a different flavor from New Orleans or Baton Rouge. There is more music, there is more local color, and a smaller race feel. It's a really great option for a runner who wants to have that super meaningful state experience if they're trying to tackle all the 50 states, or even if you just want to have a great state experience without a huge starting corral. Now, making our way to the Crescent City Classic 10K. It is a New Orleans tradition. It's been around since 1979. Typically, it takes place on the Saturday before Easter, and it turns a point-to-point 10K into a full 6.22 city celebration. It starts near the Central Business District, the CBD, and it works its way through New Orleans streets and finishes in City Park with a festival. The fast runners have history here, and then the rest of us folks have a full-on party because everyone gets a New Orleans ending. Now, I want to give a shout out to the Every Woman's Marathon because in 2027, it is making its destination, New Orleans, and our Extraordinary League community is heading there with a huge team, my friends. We're going to go big or go home with the Every Woman's Marathon. A couple years ago, we made our way to Savannah, but this year we are very excited to hit it up in February of 2027. And I want you to know, if you have not registered yet and you are on the fence, this is your time to get started on it. Go ahead and add yourself to the team, the Extraordinary League. For you to know, we're going to start our 20K training group on Monday, October 12th. We're going to start our 18-week training group on Monday, October 26th. And for our friends that need maybe a little bit less time on their docket, 16 weeks are going to start November 9th. Now, that will all be enough runway to make this really strong showing so that you feel absolutely fantastic during the Every Woman's Marathon weekend, knowing that it is a pace-inclusive race. It's going to wind through some of the really beautiful parts of New Orleans, including Garden District and, of course, City Park, and to get some more of the offerings of the entire city experience. So I would love to have you join us. And if you have any questions, you know where to find me at Christine@extraordinarystrides.com. Just drop in EWM into that subject line for Every Woman's Marathon. And I promise I will be quick on my reply because I really would love to see a big group of people have their best time ever for that marathon weekend. Okay. We have already alluded to it, but if you make your way to Louisiana and you don't want to sign up for a race, though, why wouldn't you want to sign up for Every Woman's with all of us? And you're in New Orleans, you're going to want to check out Audubon Park, Crescent Park, City Park, or the Lafayette Greenway. I'm going to suggest so, especially what time of year you may be there. You're going to want to run early, you're going to want to hydrate intentionally, and you are going to want to finish that run with beignets afterwards, of course. Okay, friends, from Louisiana, we're going to make our way to Maine. Now, I do want you guys to know that when I don't say that I love the state or love the people, it could just be because I haven't checked it off my list yet, and Maine is one of them. I cannot wait to make my way there. But as of now, Maine is not a place that I've had a chance to visit, but all of my research indicates that it is a runner-reader dream state. It has coasts and woods and islands and moody weather. There are lighthouses, and of course, a literary identity that really is so strong that Stephen King basically built a whole climate system around it. It's one of the most legendary women in running. Joan Benoit Samuelson. Joan won the first Olympic women's marathon in 1984 and has been long synonymous with Maine running community. So yes, Maine earns its place on any serious runcation list. We're going to start our books off, though, with Olive Kitteridge by Elizabeth Strout. It's our very first pick because it's set in the fictional coastal Maine town of Crosby. It is a collection of linked stories that are interwoven and centered on a woman who can be a little difficult, a little funny, maybe blunt, a little wounded, but profoundly human. And I know if that doesn't already strike a chord for you, trust me, this is something you're definitely going to want to read just for the character work alone. With that said, my friend, you could also add The Cider House Rules by John Irving as our big immersive story. It follows Homer Wells, who grows up in Maine orphanage and struggles with questions of belonging, choices, mortality, and what family really means. It was adapted into the 1999 film, in which I cried big bucketfuls of tears, but the book has a much bigger scope than the movie can hold. There are serious ethical questions here, so it makes for a really rich discussion rather than a light, quick read. You did hear me say, though, that this stayed is synonymous with Stephen King, so light really isn't going to be on the list because you do need to add Stephen King. Carrie is going to be that number 3 on this list. It is his first published novel. It is short, but it's in Maine, and it's a very good reminder that high school can be cruel. But adding a little telekinetic power in it maybe doesn't make for the most peaceful prom ever. Now, you may know the film, but the book is fast, unsettling, and a fun way to add a little spooky season energy to a coastal runcation. For races, there's so many of you up in New England who have told me so many wonderful things about all the races there. So Shipyard Old Port Half Marathon is going to be the Portland summer option. It's usually in late June. How fantastic is it to have a race in June? I can't even fathom that here in Florida. It has a lively local vibe. It offers a chance to experience Portland, where the city has seafood options, breweries, and waterfront walking season. The course can be a little rolling for us Floridians, I'm sure. Weather can turn a tad warm. It is June after all, but runners tend to review and say that they appreciate the celebration, the city energy, and the fact that the half marathon leaves room for lunch afterwards. Of course, on this list is the Maine Marathon and Half Marathon. They're going to be our fall anchor if you're visiting during prime leaf peeping season. Typically the first Sunday in October, this Portland race takes runners along Bat Cove and through coastal New England communities. It is not marketed as Pancake Flat, but it is scenic. Hello, leaf peeping season. It's well supported, and it gives you the perfect fall cozy vibes. Now with that, we're also going to make our way to the Bay of Fundy International Marathon. It's our scenic cross-border wildcard. It is a smaller destination-style event that can include an international angle, coastal views, and the strange and beautiful tidal energy of the Bay of Fundy region. Because smaller races can change courses and formats, you really are going to want to check carefully before booking, but the appeal is super real. This is a runcation of somebody who wants gorgeous landscapes, not just a really big expo. Now, my personal Maine pairing is going to be the Cider House Rules. It's probably the first time I ever even heard of cider, of course. And I'm definitely making my way to any place that has fantastic seafood and breweries. So Shipyard Old Port Half is definitely on my list. But again, you make this all about you, my friends. Now, with that said, we have so many wonderful friends of the podcast that would probably be happy to let you know of where you should go for a run if you're there in this great state of Maine and not there for a race. But my research indicates that we should make our way to Portland's Bat Cove and Eastern Promenade, Acadia Carriage Roads, where conditions and park guidance must be followed. Please don't go rogue there. But obviously those coastal town paths can be beautiful for a slower recovery run as well. My friends, we are wrapping up this episode with Maryland. We finished this episode 2, but we still have 3 more, with Maryland, which is a state that packs an astonishing amount into its borders. So it can be small, but it is mighty. You have the Chesapeake Bay water, Baltimore neighborhoods, Annapolis maritime energy, the Appalachian Edge, and a state high point of Hove Crest, one of the oldest continuously held... Okay, I'll tell you about that in a second. Maryland is compact on a map and expansive once you start paying attention. So I'm going to tell you about the race that I kind of started a little bit, but I want to hold your intrigue. Let's get into these books, because the first pick is going to be The Immortal Life of Henrietta Lacks by Rebecca Skloot. This is going to be nonfiction. It is essential reading, and it tells the story of Henrietta Lacks, a Black woman whose cells were taken without her knowledge during treatment at Johns Hopkins in Baltimore. It's also become one of the most important tools in modern medical research. The book also follows her family and asks the questions that science too often tries to avoid about consent, race, and poverty. It also is incredibly readable. I know it's not a light read, but it is very good read in terms of you're going to want to page turn this one. Now, on the way to Maryland, you might want to add The Accidental Tourist by Ann Taylor. It is about a Baltimore family, And it follows a travel writer who is excellent at explaining how people should move through unfamiliar places, but much less capable of moving through his own life after loss. It's funny, but tender and strange in a really quiet kind of way. It's exactly the sort of character-driven Baltimore story that really makes you want to take a walk through the neighborhoods after you finish it. And last but not least is Chesapeake by James A. Michener. It's our sprawling wild card. It is a big old book. But this is not a finish it between Tuesday and Friday kind of book. It is a multi-generational saga centered on the Chesapeake Bay and the people whose lives, work, food, conflict, and identity are shaped by that water. So if you want a long-run audiobook as you're training for all of these incredible races, this is going to be the one for you. Now, when it comes to races, there's a whole lot to choose from. I mean, so much to choose from. 3 was incredibly hard. I'm going to put at the top of the list in terms of easy to access because of all the different options is the Baltimore Running Festival. It's going to be a full-scale city anchor. It is typically in October. It offers marathon, half marathon, 10K, 5K, and relay options. It's not a flat PR kind of race. It does have neighborhoods and hills, but there's a lot of history and that very real Baltimore feel. Now, runner feedback and reviews tend to praise the energy and city tour while warning you, they're warning you to respect the elevation changes. And always, as truly as always, you should plan for when it comes to any of these races is to be a bit careful about that fall weather because it can get pretty humid. Now, I added to the list the Annapolis 10 miler. It is a local tradition pick because it is typically held in August, which means 2 things can be true at once. It is beloved and it's hot enough that you'll never want to do it ever again. And then you'll sign up again when you forget how hot it is. The course has Annapolis character and a huge local running community feel. It's the kind of race you do when you want to be part of tradition, not just log another distance or another race off of your bucket list. Now, this is one of the coolest races on my list if I ever decide to go into this distance. It's the JFK 50 mile. It is historic, as I've already alluded to. It is the oldest continuously held ultra marathon in the United States. So it's usually held in November. It is not clearly a casual. I'm just going to go for a quick little run to get there. It combines road, the Appalachian Trail, the C&O Canal towpath. It is very hard to get into it as well, but it does give you a real cross-section of Maryland terrain and a giant dose of history. It's going to be a race that would require lots of training, nutrition practice, mental patience. Before we wrap up, I want to give you a little bit of a history lesson as to why I think this one is so cool. And if you're considering the ultra world, why maybe it should make it onto your list. The JFK 50 miler was founded in 1963 by William Joseph Buzz Sawyer as a private club event, but it was inspired by John F. Kennedy, of course, our president, because in the early 60s, President John F. Kennedy became really concerned about the nation's physical health. So to encourage Americans to become active, he frequently referenced an old 1908 executive order by President Teddy Roosevelt that required Marine officers to hike 50 miles in 20 hours to maintain their commissions. So following Kennedy's push, a massive nationwide 50-mile hike frenzy swept across America in the spring of 1963. Tens of thousands of people joined, including the president's brother, Attorney General Robert F. Kennedy. They all attempted these long-distance walks. So with that, we got what we now know as the JFK 50-miler race. How cool. It is a point-to-point race as well, and it takes quite a bit to train for it, my friends. But I know that you've got it in the bag if you are so inclined to knock that off your list. In the meantime, my friends, I want to thank you so much for going on this road tour with me of this gorgeous USA for our 250th. I do welcome you to provide me with thoughts, feedbacks. Of course, feel free to correct my pronunciations. Send me a voicemail. Let me know what book I should have added to this list or what race you feel best represents that state. Now, I want you to know that, again, we'll be here next week. We're going to head into Massachusetts, Michigan, Minnesota, Mississippi, Missouri, Montana, Nebraska, Nevada, New Hampshire, and New Jersey. So we're going to have a whole lot of fun with Boston history, Great Lakes energy, Minnesota marathons, Montana rivers, deserts, New England. I'm telling you, the landscape never, ever gets boring. So with that said, my friend, I would love for you, if you enjoyed this episode, to send it to a runner or reader in your life who maybe is already planning their next runcation. And until next week, read something that moves you, move in a way that feels good to you, and keep making your life extraordinary. One stride, one story, and one slightly overambitious travel plan at a time.